So my van insurance was due for renewal recently, and this is never a fun or easy task, but it just got a lot harder for me. It turned out that living full-time in my van was only one of several reasons that I almost couldn't get insurance this year. But I'm going to give you some context first and run through the lessons that I've learned as I explain why and what happened. So first of all, the process is not like buying car insurance at all. You can't use comparison websites. Every custom built campervan is different and has its own customizations, right? So you have to declare all different modifications, and so all of these quotes have to be done manually over the phone, and this takes a lot of time, probably 30 to 40 minutes at a minimum on a call with each company. And you'll be speaking to insurance brokers rather than the undertakers directly. It's essential to call 3 to 4 brokers because the quotes vary wildly. So I usually just use my lunch breaks for a good week and just try and get all these calls done. It's not a quick process, and it's really important that you are honest. So your insurance can be invalidated by any undeclared information or any undeclared changes that occur mid-policy. Commonly, this is your address or your job or modification to the vehicle. And even if a claim isn't your fault, the insurers will look for any reason to not pay out. And I've met someone whose van was stolen just after she'd finished building it, and because she hadn't fully declared what she does for a living, i.e. both jobs that she has, they refused to pay out anything at all, and she didn't get a penny from insurance, and had to start again with a whole new van and a whole new build. They have a lot of questions about you and about the vehicle, and it's so important to be honest with your answers because you need to be properly covered, that if you need to claim, then your policy actually covers you. Now, despite the growing popularity of van life in the UK and the limited number of insurance companies who offer policies for specialist converted vehicles, most brokers will not explicitly ask you if you live in the van. And so many van lifers just don't mention it. And this is where I ended up in trouble. So I never lied because I'd never asked, but when I came to renew and I volunteered this information, if I had had an accident any time up to now, I may not have been able to claim a penny, and in the event of the van being written off, I would be financially screwed. So this is a risky move if you just keep quiet about it. If they find out that you're living in the vehicle when you need to claim, they will say that you've invalidated your policy by not declaring it. Now, I can already hear you yelling at your screen, but how are they going to know? How are they going to prove that I live in the van? And if they can't prove it for you, then that's a different risk category. But for me, I'm here on the internet, on YouTube, telling people about how I live in a van. So I don't really have that argument. I spoke with some friends during my week of calling brokers and being told no a lot, several of which are content creators on YouTube or on Instagram who live full time in their vans. And one person even told me that their insurer Googled their name, which is linked to their account, and found out they were living in the van that way. So it is a real risk that they do look these things up. They find your channel, they find you. Now, this is not to say that you can't get insurance if you declare that you're in it full time, because you can. Some brokers are fine with it as long as you have a base address, and the exact words I was given is, as long as you have a base address, you can travel 365 days a year. That's fine. You just have to have an address. For me, I always have a home with my parents, but in reality I'm rarely there, and even if I am, I still sleep in my own bed on the driveway because it's my own bed. But not all brokers will insure full time. It's just important that you declare this as you call around. I will go through a list of insurers later on. So, living in a van increases your premium, even though the logic for this is unclear. You'd think that being with the vehicle most of the time would reduce the risk of theft, for example, but I asked a few brokers about this and no one could give me a straight answer. So it does cost more, but it also protects you if the worst were to happen, and if you get taken out by a 13-year-old towing a caravan on the motorway, or a drunk driver, or anybody. So in my circumstance, it wasn't complicated enough that I live in the van full time. They also ask what you do for a living. I have a full-time job, which I declare, of course, but in the last year since I last did insurance, I've also started making some money from this channel. And I didn't want to leave that undeclared because I didn't want to get caught out. But when I did declare this, and I didn't think it would be an issue, but things suddenly and surprisingly got very complicated. I had no idea that this was a thing, but apparently it is, and it triggers yet a further complication, which I'll come to later. So for some reason, the media entertainment industry, which they include content creation and influencing under, whatever name you want to give people with public profiles basically, you suddenly become high risk to insurers. No one, again, could give me a clear reason why, but speaking with friends, this is a common experience. So in my case, this is the further complication, declaring that I earn money from van content then flags that the van is part of my business, which then triggers the need for commercial cover, even if you're making a small income this way. So I already had commercial cover because it was just useful in my job sometimes. If I wanted to go to a training or pick something up on the way into work, I'm covered, right? But now, this is where I started hitting this wall, because I found brokers who would give me a quote if I lived in the van, or if I had an entertainment industry income, but both of them together just seemed to be too high for any undertaker to risk. So where I could get a quote, which wasn't very many of them in the end, this was 2 to 6 times what I was paying before. And you know what, I'm going to call them out. Okay, the good, the bad and the ugly. Let's do it. Let's review some brokers. So I ultimately went with Sterling Insurance. I told them everything by the book. This was scary. The quote was double what I paid elsewhere last year, but they didn't want to give me another quote after they found out that I was living in the vehicle. This was not ideal. I didn't want to pay twice as much, but in a cost versus risk analysis, this is the best thing and the right thing for me to do. So even though the price was higher than I'd liked, it wasn't offensive, unlike Adrian Flux, who also offered me cover based on my full disclosure at a price that I can't even bear to say out loud. So I'm going to put it on the screen. But what made this phone call particularly vomit-inducing was the guy on the phone trying to justify the cost. As like, think of it this way, it's still less than you'd be paying on rent, so it's a great deal if you think about it. And I'm just sat there, like, I think you're missing the point. I did not leave being ripped off by a landlord to live in the road and be ripped off by an insurance agency. Hard pass, no thank you. I told him it was missing the point and that I would continue my calls elsewhere. I also called the campervan motorhome club, who were surprisingly open to me living in the van. These are the ones that said, if you have a base address, you can travel every day of the year. We don't mind. So you do have to be a member, but that's only £65 a year. And I've got that to get cheaper access to different campsites when I'm travelling. And I would say that they're definitely worth a call if you're full-time, but they didn't like my YouTube income. And as I added that into the policy, they basically told me that all the offers on their screen just disappeared. And they just didn't have a policy to offer me. But if you were only full-time, didn't have an online presence, I would definitely give them a ring. Before this, I was with Howdens, who used to be called A-Plan, and they are the ones who did not want to touch me once they found out that I lived in the van full-time, so I wouldn't bother calling them. Ripe is another company that I found this year at a festival, but when I spoke to them again, they don't do full-timers. There's 2 more who I didn't call this time around, which I don't know whether or not they do full-times or YouTube or whatever, but they are Brentaker and Just Campers, who are also owned by Adrian Flux, but as are Sterling, to be fair, so it does vary. These companies have the same parent company, but they obviously operate differently. So yeah, it's possible to be insured full time. Is it easy? No. Does it take a very long time making phone calls? Yeah, so be prepared for that. But my final kind of lessons learned and my advice to anyone else out there, be honest. Even if it costs more, you're avoiding that claim refusal nightmare scenario. If you can personally take that risk, that's up to you, but for me it just doesn't bear thinking about. If I lost this van and lost all the money tied into it, I'd not be in a good place. So Final lessons learned. Be honest, even if it costs more. It avoids claim refusal when you need it. Always call multiple brokers. Don't take the first quote. Often they'll ask you if you've already been given a quote or a renewal price. They will then try and match or beat that, so use it to your advantage. I know some people who just give them a fake number, which is your prerogative if you want to give that a go. If you've told them something over the phone and then you don't see it reflected in the writing of your policy, and you always want to check that what you've said in that call makes it down in writing, just give them a call back and question it and make sure that what is on that paperwork is legit, and you always have those phone call records to fall back on. You can request them if you need to. And if you're sharing your lifestyle publicly, your insurer may well find out. So I wouldn't gamble on it, but up to you. We all have our different risk tolerance levels. I'm just wanted to share with everybody else what I've discovered in the last couple of weeks, because I didn't see this coming. I honestly just thought it would be fairly straightforward. Maybe that was naive, who knows. But yes, I am now fully insured, thank goodness, and can carry on with my happy little van life. So I'll see you soon. I'm going to be doing some travelling shortly, which I'll start recording, including Glastonbury Festival again. So I'm very excited for that. Stick around and tune in if you want to see what it's like taking my entire home to Glastonbury Festival. See you later.